There we go. All right, we're back recording again. I just heard it tell me I was stopped. So from Los Angeles, my name is Sani and I'm excited to be here. I want to make sure, are you guys all, just want to make sure everyone's seeing me. I actually am seeing the happening at Michael's right now. So I just want to make sure that we've got the right things going on for us as we're going forward. As I said, my name is Sani and I'm excited to be here. Yeah, in the small window, right? Monet, am I in the small window, not the big window?
You're in the small.
Okay, so somehow we have to get that switched over, Victoria. So, but I'm just going to keep going for a minute because I want to make sure, because I'm sure we'll get that switched over so you can see a little bit better. What I want to do is I want to make sure that, you guys know what's going on. Monet is going to be helping me today, so I can kind of see the chat, but once I get going, I often will, not be looking at the chat. So if something comes up, please put it in the chat and we'll go ahead and definitely she'll ask me those questions as needed. Okay, so she'll ask me those questions as needed. The other thing I want to make sure is today we are going through a few different accessory feet that are in some of our kits. The thing with accessory feet is they can be used on many different machines. One we're going to talk about here is this home deck kit. So the home deck kit. And with the home deck kit on the back, and I'm going to try, there we go. I'm going to try and turn this up, and I know there's a lot of glare, but up here at the top of the home deck kit, there are some letters. Can you all kind of see? It says, you maybe don't see it, but MB, CB, CC, CE, those are different like styles of our Singer machines. So you want to make sure that you get the proper accessory foot that goes with your machine. So please make sure on our website and on Michael's, there are different things that will tell you like what is your machine. So please make sure you do that because we want to make sure you have the right foot for your machine. And one of the fun things about the kits is this helps you go through different things. But the other thing about the kit is maybe you already have a ruffler, but you really want to get the bias binders. So you can also get those separately on a lot of the different feet. So just kind of be aware of that too. All right, so today what I'm going to do is, like I said, we're going to talk about some different feet, but also just so you know, I'm not really going to go through like how to set up your machine or how to thread the machine or that sort of thing. We're going to really talk about the feet themselves. We have so many classes in our Michael's YouTube from Singer that basically shows you all those things I just said. So about threading, about, what needles to use, what thread to use. So if you are, if you're interested or you're expecting that to be in this class, we really don't have time for that, but there are so many others classes out there that please take a look at that. So I just don't want you guys to think, oh, she's ignoring me or if I have that question. So, all right, guys, you ready to go? I'm excited to show you all this. So the first kit we're going to work with, it is called the Home Deck Kit. And I'm going to flip to a different camera. I think this will be less glare and you can see it a little bit better. With the Home Deck Kit, it actually comes with 3 different feet, one being the ruffling foot or the ruffler. Then the next one actually is called the bias binder foot. And then what I'm going to show you today, it looks like the smallest one, but this is one of my favorite feet. And that foot is the piping foot. Okay, so that's the piping foot. But for the ruffler, I just want to show you a couple different things. We did a class with the ruffler not so long ago. And what I just want to share with you is, let's see if I can come up here. This is what a ruffler does. See how it has nice little pleats. I'm gonna try and scoot in. Can you see how there's little pleats up here at the top? And then here are a little bit further apart pleats. That is what a ruffler does, is it creates pleats. I'm going to show you a gathering foot here in just a little bit, but the ruffler actually creates more like pleats, and that's this big piece down here. The bias binder or the binder foot, this one here, what that really does, and I have a couple examples. I put one in the wrong spot, so I'm going to reach for it here. You can't see me reaching for it, but I'm going to reach for it. The bias, the binding attachment or the binding foot allows you, can you see that, how fun that is? There's just this bias around the edge. And same thing like on here. This foot, so the foot itself, what it's doing is it's guiding, you can kind of see those numbers, but it's going to guide your bias onto the edge of things. So that's the bias foot. But one of my favorite feet, and one of the things I love to do with home dec, is put in piping. And so I wanted to share the piping foot with you. And I'm going to ask the question, and Monet, maybe you can let me know if people, how many of you have put in piping in pillows or different things like that? Because this is one of my favorite things, is actually putting piping. Yes, Kathy says yes. Putting piping on your, like in a pillow. This, I've had it sitting back here, but this is a little quilted pillow. Putting piping in is, it can take a few steps, but this particular foot is actually pretty cool because I'm going to show you a different way to use this. I'm going to show you the regular way and then a different way. But see how there's actually two grooves in the back of that? So this is actually what's called a double welt or a double piping foot. So it's actually really cool. So I'm just going to snap this on, and I will try to be very conscious of my left hand here, everyone, although sometimes it just has to be in the picture. And the first thing, so here's our goal, is to be able to put a nice little piece of piping in between two pieces of fabric. All right, so this is our goal. When you make piping, I'm going to ask another question of the group here. Does everyone know what bias means when you talk about bias in your fabric? How many of you know what bias means? You can raise your hand yes, or you can like say no or whatever. This piece of fabric, this is just like on the fold, this is just a piece of cotton fabric. With regular cotton fabric or just regular woven fabric, see how when I pull it like that, it doesn't stretch. And when I pull it like that, it really doesn't stretch. What that really means is you're pulling with the weave of the fabric, either, you know, lengthwise or widthwise with the weave of the fabric. And if I get up close, you can kind of see how it is, there's like lines going this way and this way. And that's the weave of the fabric. What bias is, and I cut my, I'll show you what it is on that piece in a minute, but what bias does is when I pull, look at how that stretches. So what that means is, here's my regular straight areas. Look at how, oh, it's hard to see. When you cut the fabric at a 45-degree angle and cut your piece at that 45-degree angle, that is what is called bias. And that's what gives you the stretch. Okay, so bias is a normal woven or non-stretchy fabric, but when you cut it at a 45-degree angle, you get stretch. Okay, does that kind of make sense to you all? Because, and I'm kind of looking at the chat, hopefully it makes a little sense that that's where that comes from, is especially when you're going in a curve or like a little corner like we've got down here, to go around curves and corners, if it's not on the bias, it doesn't give a nice curve. So that's why when you're using piping, especially for like for garments or for like the pillow that I just showed you, you want to use a bias. Okay, so you want to use a bias. So with our particular, so with this foot, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more. Okay. And with this, I'm going to take my piece of cording, and I can use a pretty thick cord with this particular piping foot. Some piping feet, you cannot use the cord that's this thick. All right, so cannot use the cord that's this thick. I can, because check this out. I'm going to use the extra high lift that I have on my heavy duty. I happen to be using a computerized heavy duty machine today, and I'm going to flip over to this. This is going to show me like my first stitch. I'm going to use a lot of straight stitch today, and that's where the feet actually help you, because you are using basic stitches, but the feet are going to give you more help guidance for what you got going on. So I'm just using a regular straight stitch today. That's stitch number 1, center needle position. And last week we had a lot of questions. Your normal average stitch length is 2.5, everybody. That's your normal average stitch length. So with that being said, let's come back here. I'm just using a normal straight stitch. And what I'm allowing my machine to do for me, and this particular presser foot, can you see how, maybe I can zoom in just a little bit more. I don't want to get too close because you lose what's going on if I get too close. My cord, which I still have out here, I've got it in the fold, and I'm just sewing with a straight stitch, and that foot is guiding my cord perfectly. You can certainly use a zipper foot, and it will get up close to the edge. So that's what a lot of people do. But why I love the piping foot is, notice it's just grabbing and making sure everything is aligned as I'm sewing through this. Okay. So I'm just going to come to the edge there, and I'm just going to zoom back out just a little bit. And then you check that out, see how, and I know that last time it was a little bit tricky to see, but can you see this? You can see the stitching. I tried to use a little bit different colors, but see how it's just nice right up against the cord. And so that was a center, and I see someone's question, Kathy. It says it's hard to see where the needle was actually hitting, but it is. I'm just going to put this back under. So the cord is here. The needle is hitting off to the side. So it is just hitting right off to the side of where that cord was. And now that's where hopefully you can see how it's just right off to the edge of the cord, right? So it's off to the edge of the cord. So at this point, I'm going to come in and I'm just going to trim. And guys, if you have a nice pair of those Singer bent trimmers, this is a great time to use it. Hopefully you can see. I'm just trimming up. I'm going to leave about 1/4 of an inch of fabric. So it's about 1/4 of an inch. It doesn't have to be necessarily exact. But I'm just going to go all the way up to the edge. I definitely made what I wrapped this with. I've definitely made my fabric. Okay, so I definitely made my fabric super big. So it was bigger than what it needed to be, but I wanted you to see what the bias was. All right. So now, and Kathy, hopefully you can see it's right on that edge. What my next step is going to do is I'm actually going to move the needle closer in to the cords. So I made it with a center needle position. Now we're going to scoot our needle all the way over, and we're going to place this in our fabric. So here's where, let me zoom out just a little bit more. I've got the right side of my fabric here. So the right side, the pretty side, is up. I'm going to take the cording that I made, or the piping that I made, excuse me. And if this is the outside edge or the seam allowance of my pillow, of my garment, whatever it is, and the actual fold and cord goes to the main part. And then we're going to put the pretty sides or right sides together. Hopefully you can see that. And I'm going to line that up. Now, here is where you can see it's like, okay, where do I sew? What do I do? Because this is where it becomes tricky. This is where the piping foot is going to, let me take the piping foot off for just a moment so you can see this. So the foot itself with that little groove, you can see that groove, it's just going to set right on top of the cord. And I don't have to worry about where it is. And when I sew, see how it's just going to move down. You guys with me on that? So the cord itself is just going to sit right in that groove. And then I don't have to worry so much about where I'm lining up. All right. So let's do this. It's always a little bit trickier on camera, everybody. So I'm sorry if it's just a little bit trickier. But here we go. So let's zoom back in, and hopefully, Kathy, you'll be able to see this a little bit. So my needle is going to hit right next to the cording, and I got to make sure my cording is on my fabric. I'm gonna use a little bit bigger seam allowance than what normally is. And then I'm going to set this down here. There we go. So you can see it a little bit better. So here's my needle. It's going to go right on the cord. But this is a tip for you all. If your machine has needle position, so right now the needle's right in the center of my presser foot. See how that just jumped? Can you see how my finger was in the way? Center needle position, I'm going to scoot it over. 2 little ticks. So now I've just moved the needle to the left. What that now means is when I sew, that needle is going right on the edge, right next to where the piping was. And then, so you can't see it from here. Oh, there we go. But it went right next to the piping. But check this out. When you open it up, it's perfect. You don't see any of your previous stitching because we moved the needle position over.
Someone asked what stitch length you use.
Yeah, so great question. So let me go ahead and zoom out again. So I'm just going to come back here for a minute. And basically the stitch length is going to be the length that you would use for normal sewing on whatever fabric you're using. So again, 2.5 stitch length. So the length of 2.5, that's your average. And for like a cotton fabric like this, that is basically what I would use for just an average medium weight fabric. I would use 2.5. If you're using like a heavier fabric, like a denim, I would use my stitch length at 3.0, so a little bit bigger. And fine fabrics, usually you're going to use your stitch length a little bit smaller, so maybe down to 2. But for, again, average sewing, you're going to, or average fabrics, you're going to use a 2.5 stitch length. Okay. So it's really this, I love actually this technique. If you think about it, putting that on the edge of a jacket or on a collar, it really is basically, it's a beautiful way to add a special touch, right? Special touch. And I see, is it easy to control the seam allowance with the cording? So if you are doing a long piece, or if you're doing a pillow or a collar, you definitely want to use clips. Like a lot of people like to use the little clips that you use for quilting or other things, or pins. I'm still a pin person, so I would pin, make sure that my seam allowance is set as I go through. So you want to take that time if you're doing something a little bit longer. So use your pins. But once you are sewing, right? So once you're sewing along, because you have it set with the pin or the clip, once you're sewing, just take that off and that foot just really, really feeds well. Okay. So you can use it. You certainly could use it for making totes. You could use it for just really wherever you think piping would be cool. And what I wanted to share with you, and you know what? Well, there is with this foot, I actually, let me go back here. And I'm going to zoom out just a little bit more so I can share this with you. With this foot, you can actually use 2 pieces of cord. See how I've got 2 pieces of cord, and this may have to be another lesson here, right? So another lesson for this, but what I did is I just had my 2 pieces of cord and then sewed right down the center with my 2 pieces of cord. Then what I did is I took the extra fabric and I wrapped it around and sewed down that center again. So now check that out. When I trim this really closely, I have this beautiful, like it's a braid. And I was rummaging around. I found this really cute little, I'm going to come back here. I found this really cute little denim jacket, but now it's not going to remain just a plain denim jacket. I'm going to take my double cording and I'm going to put that around the cuff. Won't that be cute, right? So just stitch right down that center using that same foot. So many things you can do with piping and the cording and just adding extra to garments, to pillows, to anything like that. So I've been kind of watching. Any other questions, Monet? Any questions, guys, for this?
No questions.
I think it is really neat. So I'm excited that, again, with the kit, so with the full kit, and of course I put it somewhere that I won't find it right now, but here we go. So with the full kit, you have that great ruffler, you have a bias binder, but the piping for me, that's really where I'm not a ruffle person, but I am a piping person. So you have lots of options for that. All right. So that was our home deck kit. And even though it's home deck, you think about all the things you can do. I see a lot of people are saying, you can do anything. So garments, home deck, quilts, bags, all of that with the piping. The next piece, or the next kit, sorry, as I'm turning around here, the next kit that we're going to work with is the quilting kit. How many of you guys out there, and how many of you, all of you out there are actually quilters? Or maybe I kind of think about this for myself sometimes. I was a wannabe quilter, right? So I was like, oh, I've never really quilted much, but I want to be, right? So maybe that's you. I see someone, nope, but open to the idea, want to get started. This little kit is really, really nice. And it comes with 3 different feet. All of them are quite essential in what you're going to do with quilting. And the first, I'm not going to use everything. I'm going to use one of them. But the first one is what is called a walking foot. And some machines have basically a built-in walking foot depending upon what you have. This is a really nice walking foot in the Singer kit because basically what it does, I'm going to try and get up here. Notice how there's actually little extra teeth, and every time the needle goes up and down, those extra teeth go down and it helps pull the fabric from the top. The beauty of that is when you're doing something like this, can you all kind of see how the quilting is crisscrossed in all of it's X'd through all of these little pieces. By using a walking foot, it's going to move when you're actually stitching, it's going to move the top and the back or the bottom piece at the same rate. And that's why the walking foot is so great, okay? Because that way, when you're doing just straight line quilting, it works well. And it also, the walking foot also works well when you're working on super heavy fabrics, because that might need help coming through as well. So the walking foot is really great for that. The other foot that is included in this kit, and sometimes making a lot of noise here, everybody. Sometimes our Singer machines will come with what's called a 1/4 inch foot. It usually is can you see how there's only one, if I do this right, let's come back here. You can see it better over here. Can you see how there's just a single little hole? It's not a very big space. And this little hole right here, that is just for straight stitching only. Well, what happens is you still, when you're stitching, it's a 1/4 inch seam, so it's helping you get that seam, but I never follow, I don't follow the rules very well. I sometimes wander. Within the quilting kit, this is a 1/4 inch, but look, it's got this little guide on the edge. What that does is it forces you, when you're sewing along, it doesn't allow you to go beyond that, right? So for me, I really like this because it helps me guide better when I'm sewing. So that is a 1/4 inch foot with a guide, and that is included in our quilting kit. All right, so that is a little different, and that is included in the quilting kit with the walking foot. But the foot I really want to show you today, okay? And I see that they don't, I see someone asked about, all of these feet go on all Singer machines? The answer is you do have to look up and see. These may not fit your Singer machine, they may. What you have to look at is these little letters in back and see what is your machine in there and what accessories does it take. But even if this kit doesn't work, there are some feet that are like on the Michaels website that are a little bit different for a different ankle. For any of you who are used to sewing, you know that like this piece right here, this is called the ankle. And if ankles are a little bit different, they actually won't fit certain feet. So I want to make sure you realize that, you know, these kits are wonderful, but you do want to make sure that they will fit your machine. Okay, so that's where you want to take a look and see about, you know, if it's going to work on your machine. That's a really good question. And I can't say enough, you know, that we want to make sure that that happens. All right. So the last foot that is in the quilting kit, this is called a free motion spring foot. And what, hopefully, if I do that, can you see how it's a clear bottom to this foot? And it's got a couple little red guides on it. It's got a couple red guides. This foot is great for free motion quilting. It's also great for free motion, like embroidery, if you want to do free motion embroidery. But I do for this foot, I'm taking this ankle. Remember I mentioned about an ankle. I'm going to give you a little tip because I don't know why I'll set this ankle somewhere and I will never ever remember where I put it. If I do that and I have the foot on it, so I've got the foot on the ankle, when I set it aside, it's just bigger so I can find it easier. Pardon me. So now to put this foot on, again, I'm going to try and keep my left hand out of the way. There are a couple little tips I'm going to give you. One is, for any of you who don't know, this right here, this is what is called the needle bar. See how that moves up and down when I move the needle? That is called the needle bar. This little piece right here that's on the spring, there we go, you can see it that way. That must go above the needle bar when you put it in place. So it must go above the needle bar. And then this is where the little screw for your presser foot ankle goes. And again, I know that my hand was kind of in the way, but see how I'm just pushing that up. That little bar is above the needle bar. And then I'm gonna, hopefully, and I am using the little screwdriver. And for any of you who have Singer machines and you've wondered what this little thing is, this is your little screwdriver. And I got to tell you, I keep one of these in my purse because it comes in handy. So I make sure that that's nice and tight. This is above the needle bar. And then everyone, all I'm going to do is go back to a normal straight stitch. So normal straight stitch here. I'm going to show you the length is not really going to matter, but I want the needle to be in the center. Okay, so center needle straight stitch. When I said that the length is not going to matter, let's zoom in a little bit. I am giving you a little anatomy of a sewing machine right here. These little pieces right there, those are called feed teeth or feed dogs. Can you see how when I move the needle up and down, those move up and down? Hopefully you all, I think that's a good shot. I think you can see that very well. For free motion sewing, we need to either cover, some of our Singer machines have covers, but this one has, on the very back, has a little what's called a feed teeth or feed dog drop. Watch what happens. See how it just went away. Okay. It just went away. And so now I am personally going to control how the fabric moves through. And that is done. I'm going to come back to me for a minute. I say that is done. If you were watching me rather than the machine, what you would see is my tongue would be in the side of my mouth. I'd be concentrating really hard because you have to think a little bit when you're actually doing this. So, but I want you to see the machine, not me, but just realize this is something that you practice, and it does take a little practice to do. So I already set up a little, what's called a quilt sandwich. And this is my practice run yesterday as I was making sure that I could do everything. The quilt sandwich really is a backing, your batting, and then your fabric on top. Okay, so backing, batting, and fabric on top. Okay, so when I place my fabric underneath, and I'm gonna start on this other side here. Make sure to put your presser foot down. So even though it didn't go down all the way to hold anything, and make sure my presser foot is down. And here is where, when I put the needle down, the presser foot goes down and it holds the fabric. When I bring the needle up, the presser foot comes up and it allows you to move the fabric. Can you see that? So what that kind of means is, and I do, now it's hard to see, but I do like to bring up my bottom fabric, my bottom thread, if I can, right? So I like to bring up that bottom thread if I can. That made a kind of a funny noise, but it's okay. All right, so here we go. You with me? I'm going to step on my foot control. And after I take a couple stitches, and honestly, this is the beauty of this Singer 6700, see the heavy duty? It allows me to stop with the needle down. So I did not turn my hand wheel, the machine did that for me. And now, the faster I step on the foot control, the faster I need to move my fabric. And Monet, I cannot see because I am concentrating. Can we see okay?
Yes, it's
Okay. And if I move the fabric, if I slow down and I move the fabric really fast, look, I said slow down and I got faster. So slow down, but move the fabric fast. You get basting stitches. And then if I speed up and move the fabric really slow, and I'm going to stop for a minute just so you guys can see this. So there we go. You can see how when I went really, when I moved the fabric fast, I had really long stitches. When I moved the fabric slow, I had really little stitches. What takes your practice is getting used to, you know, how fast do I move my fabric for what I've got going on. And once you get pretty good, you actually have really nice even stitches. So it just takes practice. But check out, isn't that cool how that foot just holds the fabric where it needs to be and then basically lets you move it whenever, you know, as you need. So are there any, I will tell you guys, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I started sewing when I was 8 years old. And one of the first things my mom had me do, because she was teaching me, was like do free motion stuff. And so I learned early not to be afraid, right? And so I think it's really cool to just try, get a piece of fabric. I mean, this is just extra fabric. Don't do it on your special quilt that you just made. What you want to do is you want to mess around and basically play with it and then try. And I will tell you, we've done 2 other Singer classes that are up on, that should be up on Singer YouTube with Michael's, and 2 other classes on specifically this. So if you want to learn more about this, check out the YouTube channel with Michael's and then Singer on the YouTube channel, the Michael's YouTube. And we've got 2 classes on this. So it is really cool, but the foot itself that is within that kit is wonderful when you're doing stuff like that. So any other questions about the technique sort of thing? I see package toolkit, 3 different screwdriver. I mean, there's lots of, I think when I look at this, I do feel like accessory feet, did I need to have that accessory foot or the piping foot for what I've been doing so far? No, not really. But guess what? Wasn't it easier when you have the right tool? So if you guys cook or if you do woodworking or anything like that, you know that different tools are going to make things easier. So you want to have the right tool, and that's what these feet give you. All right. So I don't see any other questions coming, so I'm going to move on. Okay, so I'm going to move on. And the next kit what I'm gonna do is going to work with the garment sewing kit. Okay, so the garment sewing kit. And this kit, again, you've seen how these kind of, I guess, the different feet, although they may be in a home deck kit, I'm using it for something else. Or like with the quilting kit, you know, you can use it for different things. With the garment sewing kit, there is a specific foot that I know it's sold separately as well. But with this specific foot, it is called, oh, I better read it to get it right. I was gonna say it right. The So Easy foot. That's this foot here. What this foot does, if you can see, there's a white guide. That little white guide is movable. So last week when we were talking about different different seams, what I was talking about is for garments, usually you use a 5/8 inch seam. In quilting, you use a 1/4 inch seam, which is why we love this foot, right? The 1/4 inch seam. For home deck often, and for costuming, it's often a 1/2 inch seam. So, you know, this foot allows you, it's not specific to one, it allows you to move that depending upon what you're doing. It also allows you, I've got a little quilt hanging up in the corner, but also it allows you to, let's say you want to just have rows of stitching. I'm going to show you another foot in a minute, but this allows you to do rows of stitching that you're going to have in line as well. So that is the So Easy foot. Last week, when we were doing hems, I mentioned there was something that's called a rolled edge foot. And pardon me, I said that wrong. Rolled hem foot. Rolled edges with sergers. Rolled hems are with machines. And this foot is really, really cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my machine for the rolled hem foot. And then we're going to come back. I'm going to show you what the gathering foot allows you to do. So we're going to actually use 2 of these feet. And I can come back here. All I'm doing, everybody, so just so you know, I'm just took off the 1 foot. And then I'm going to put my ankle back on. So I'm just going to slide this up. And again, using whichever screwdriver. Someone said that there was a Singer kit that had like 3 different screwdrivers in it, which is great. So whichever screwdriver you want to do. And the rolled hem foot. See this little guy right here. If I go like that, and maybe get it a little bit closer, there's a little whirl. You see how if I do that, there's a little whirl right here. And what that whirl allows you to do is it takes your fabric and it rolls it underneath. And that is a rolled hem. And I got to tell you, if you were to do something that fine, look at how fine that is. Isn't that beautiful? If you were to do that on basically, and here's another little sample that I have, that would take forever to actually roll it. So this again, part of the garment sewing kit, it is called the rolled hem foot. And then I'm going to go ahead and snap that in. Everyone, with the rolled hem foot, I'm back to using a straight stitch. So many of these things that we have been working with, right, are straight stitch things that could you do this without? I don't know if I could ever do this without using this foot. All I'm going to do is I'm going to flip over here, back to my straight stitch, center needle, but I'm going to, for the first couple stitches, I'm going to take my stitch length really, really close together, and I'm going to show you why. But there's one other thing that I forgot. I have to remember to get my feed dogs back up. I gotta flip that switch in the back. And I almost forgot again. I forgot yesterday as I was practicing and getting ready for you all, and my machine wasn't moving. And I'm like, what in the world? Well, guess what? That was all user error because I forgot to put my feed teeth back up. So here we go. I'm just gonna take a couple little bitty stitches right at the beginning. So it's just a couple stitches right there. And I'm gonna zoom in quick. I always run out of time. This would be beautiful for a little baby's hem, right? Because it's just fine, but a couple little stitches. This is how I have learned to start my rolled hem. You may, if you look this up, you may find other people will do this in different ways, but I take those threads and I take my fabric with the threads, and I'm going to try and zoom in and keep my hand away, but I don't know that I can do that easily. All right, but I'm just going to pull this in here like this, and then I'm going to put my presser foot down. And can you kind of see how this is starting to curl already? So now let's take our stitch length back to, and if we were in class together right now, I would ask you, if we were in the same place, I would ask you, okay, what is our average stitch length? 2.5. So we're going back to average stitch length of 2.5. And now I'm just going to sew. One of the important things about hem like this, and you see how that's kind of curling. One of the most important things is you are actually sewing on the wrong, would be the wrong side of your fabric. So the wrong side of your fabric would be up. And why that's important is then you got to make sure that your bobbin thread looks beautiful on the other side, right? So you want to make sure your tensions are set. But gosh, can you see that? Isn't that just wonderful? So there's my little rolled hem. And this is like for men's shirt tail hems, but someone said, would this be good for a baby? It'd be great because it's a fine hem and there's no, it wouldn't be rough for them or anything like that. This is a handkerchief hem, so you could do that for on just beautiful handkerchiefs. But I mentioned, so there's your rolled hem. The other, and actually I'm just going to leave that on because the other foot I'm going to use is what is called the gathering foot. So let's take that off. The gathering foot is much smaller than the ruffler. The ruffler was a really big piece. The gathering foot, okay, so I'm just trying to get this on as quick as I can here. And, oh, right there.
So we do have a couple questions.
Okay, yeah, please, while I'm putting this on.
Someone asked, any tips for doing rolled hem on slippery fabric?
Oh, goodness. I'm going to come back here. Tips for rolled hem on slippery fabrics. You guys, that it's tricky, right? It's tricky. The one thing, if the fabric can be starched, if it's slick fabric and it can be starched, then I would starch it a little bit if that's a possibility. Some of these, like some of the fabrics you can't get wet. So those there are different sizes of rolled hems. So you might try there are different feet. So you can try and find one that maybe is a little bit bigger, because this little bitty hem, and I see that someone asked about trying to see this a little bit closer, the back. So again, there's your front, the back here. I had a couple, these are like I did not trim my fabric super well, but there we go. So you can see, you can't even, I mean, it is completely rolled under. So there, you know, is that is your, it's just such a beautiful hem. So hopefully you can see that. That's the back a little bit closer, but if again, if you, and I'll talk about tension in just a minute, Monet, so I see that one. But if you are using those slippery fabrics, those are tricky. I'm not gonna say they aren't. So those are a little bit tricky. But starching can help. And then a fine needle, I've got actually a kind of a big needle in, but definitely use a 7511 needle, a smaller needle, or even a stretch needle. That might help you as well. So I've got my gathering foot on, and actually I know you can see this really well. Can you see how there's a little like cut, a little gap right here? And what that gap allows you to do is what I've done here is I actually gathered my little piece of fabric onto the straight piece of fabric. And that's what's cool about a gathering foot. What you need to remember is whatever you're going to gather, you're going to put completely under the foot, and the right side is up. So the pretty side is up. Then you're going to take what you're going to sew the gather to and put it in that slot. Okay. So I'm going to put that in the slot. Can you see how I slid that there? So it's now it's in the slot. Maybe I can, yeah, my hand is right in the way. It's hard to see, but that's right in that slot. And now I put my presser foot down. This is where I'm going to come back here real quick. You want your stitch length as long as it will go. So whatever your stitch length can be, make it as long as it will go. And I don't actually have a good camera, but you might want to take your tension up just a little bit. All right. So this is the hardest part for me is when I start sewing, I want to like hold things. I just have to guide because now the bottom, I don't know, let's see. I'm going to actually zoom out a little bit. I think I'm going to get a better view. And what's happening is it's starting to ruffle underneath. And then when I start sewing again, just continuing to gather as I go along. And again, I know that's really hard on camera to do that. But what it did is it gathered as I was sewing. Can you see that? So that's actually pretty cool, is being able to sew and gather all in one step. So that is really, really fun. The estimate for the ruffle is basically what you have to do is if you know, you have to try it, right? Each fabric is a little different. Each thread's a little bit different. What I can say and what I can do is basically if I have this much fabric and my ruffle is this big, how does it gather up on a small area, right? In a smaller area. So if it's 2 to 1, the only way to really do it is measure. And so you gotta, and sometimes you may have fabrics that are similar. So you can test it with a fabric that's similar. The longer the stitch length, the higher the tension, the more it's going to gather. So long stitch length, tighter tension, it's going to gather more. So if you want it to gather more, that's what you're going to make that change. All right. So the next little thing that someone asked was about the tension. I do have one more. And actually, I think this particular kit, the crafting kit, is pretty darn straightforward. So I'm just gonna, I think it's important that I'll go through really quick about tension. So I'll go through really quick about, excuse me, I think the tension is important. The crafting kit, okay, so the crafting kit has got a couple really great feet in it. What I was going to show, but I think the tension is going to be really key for this. So I'm going to talk about tension very briefly. But two of the feet, one of them is called a non-stick foot. And you'll see that it's the white, it's not a clear foot, it's not a metal foot, it's actually a white plastic foot. On the back of this, it has some non-stick, it's actually a little non-stick sticker, actually, non-stick sticker. That doesn't make that much sense, but it's on the back of the foot. When you're using leathers, and that's where, again, for crafting, we sometimes use some funky different types of fabric. Your regular sewing foot, when you're sewing, it can actually stick. And this is a faux leather, but the foot itself, see how it's kind of moving the fabric because it's sticking to the fabric. That's why a non-stick foot is really important if you are using these funky fabrics, right? So that is something the non-stick foot is great for. And then the other foot, I mentioned it earlier, is this little foot right here. And this is, again, make sure I'm saying the right name of the foot. And it is called the parallel sewing foot, which makes a lot of sense. Let's say you're doing this fun. Zoom back out. This is a fun little placemat. You want your stitches to be even throughout as you're doing this. This foot is perfect for that because you're not only sewing on the left, you can also sew on the right. And you have the, like, you look there, that's like right in the perfect distance to make sure everything is even. So this is actually one of my favorite feet. I keep this one out a lot because I've never sewed very, I have to work at sewing straight. And so because I have to work at sewing straight, I like to have that foot available to help me out for it. So I know we're right about at time, but I'm just gonna I just want to talk about tension for just a minute. Because the tension, and someone asked, I am not going to be the person, actually Wendy's going to be doing, not next week, next week, Claire is going to be talking about buttonholes. So there we go, I got my ankle back on, and I have just put my regular sewing foot. So Claire's going to be talking about buttonholes, and then Wendy's going to talk about, she's going to work with you guys on the troubleshooting. So Wendy's going to work with you guys on the troubleshooting. So I'm just going to come back here and stitch number 5. If I put that down, that is or back, maybe I can't. It's a zigzag stitch. I can't get you to that very easily right now. Maybe if I do that, there we go. You want to choose a zigzag stitch when you're looking at your tensions. And then you want to make sure that you have a pretty wide width for the zigzag. Then you're going to come back over here, regular sewing foot, and you're just going to sew that zigzag stitch. Okay. And when I sew the zigzag stitch, don't look at any like this. This is what we call tunneling when it kind of pulls in a little bit. Don't necessarily worry about the tunneling itself. Don't worry about this when you're looking at tension. Come to the back. And then you're going to look and see, are you seeing any of your top thread being pulled down? And if it's slightly down, that's just fine. If it's a lot down, so I'm going to see if I can do a fast thing here. Okay. So see how the top thread is really pulled down. It's pulled underneath, whereas that, it looks real nice. When it's pulled down like that, that means your top tension is too low or your bobbin tension is too high. But use a zigzag stitch and see if it looks even here or if you've got thread pulling. That's the fastest, easiest way to check out your tension, okay? So that's the fastest, easiest way. If it's super different, Wendy will talk about tension, I'm sure, in a couple of weeks, but basically, if you can't adjust it by adjusting the tension on your machine, you may have to take it into a service person just to look at, but check your tension like that, okay? Yeah, you know, check your tension with this, with your zigzag, but also, you know, make sure you have the right needle in. A new needle, because that will affect your tension. So like before class, I made sure that I changed the needle on my machine here because I never know how long has it been. Well, let's get a new needle. That'll help my tension. And thread, make sure you have good thread. All of those things play into tension. And Sharon, I know you asked about the side cutter. That would have taken a little more time. What the side cutter is used for is, let's say you are making an overcast seam, it'll actually cut right next to your stitching after the fact. So it works kind of like a serger. However, it's not as fast because your sewing machine can't sew as fast as a serger. But that's what the side cutter does, is it actually cuts the fabric up close to a seam edge. So good question.
We have a last question.
Yeah.
Somebody asked a minute ago. This is about the free foot. They said when using the free foot, do they need to lower the claws to retract to provide a smooth floor? And if they do, how do they do that?
So when you're using that free motion foot, right? So that free motion foot, you drop your feed dogs or you feed teeth, or as you were saying, what's pulling through. We usually call them feed dogs or feed teeth, but you do have to either drop that or cover it. Some machines have a little plastic piece that covers that. You definitely want to do that because, especially when you're doing free motion on quilting, if you don't have a nice smooth movement, your stitches look very jerky. So yes, you definitely want to lower those. And like for this, there was a little lever in the back. Some machines have levers in front. Some again have a cover. So look at your manual. Your manual should be able to tell you how you are going to either cover or lower your feed dogs and feed teeth. All right, guys, that's it. I'm just a little bit over, but I think we did really well today. I hope you learned some stuff, had a little bit of fun. All of the different accessory feet kits, again, I think of them as an investment. I can't do some things without them. So that's why, you know, think about what is it that you want to do and what is the kit you're going to start with? Because I start with one and then it's like, okay, so what's the next one I need? Because what is the next thing I'm going to do? So it is really key. Those feet are great. You can get them at michaels.com. And again, don't forget the Singer Heavy Duty. I'm working on the 6700C. Beautiful machine. You saw how easy it is. I get spoiled with computer machines. So if you're looking for a new machine to start doing some stuff, this is a great machine for it as well. So again, thanks a lot, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.